What happens when you stop compartmentalizing your spiritual gifts and you start building a successful business that actually reflects your soul? So many leaders feel like they have to choose between their spirituality bucket and their business bucket. But choosing between whether it's strategy or spirituality or publishing and your psychic gifts or community versus commerce, it's not actually an either or. It can be an and when you choose to let yourself be all of you inside of your business. Today's guest is proof that you don't have to choose at all. If you've ever felt called for something bigger, if you have known that there was more magic in your current business than you were actually giving yourself permission to experience, or if you've ever heard that whisper to just like take the lead, do the thing, build the community, launch the yoga studio, and you wondered if you could actually trust that internal voice, this conversation is you. Building a brand isn't just about visibility, it's about alignment. And Susie Schaefer is revolutionizing her world by blending her spiritual gifts with publishing and podcasting. She is the founder of Finish the Damn Book Publishing, helping authors move from idea to impact while simultaneously stepping deeper into her intuitive gifts, offering oracle readings and Reiki, and opening a yoga studio in her community. She's a serial entrepreneur, and we love that type here on the Crown Yourself podcast. So, welcome to a conversation that is about taking leaps of faith, trusting your gut and your feminine intuition when no one else quite sees the vision yet, and knowing that you can do it. And if she can, so can you. Welcome, Susie, to the Crown Yourself podcast.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. I was so excited to share on this podcast today.
I know. And you were on the Communication Queen podcast sharing all about your knowledge and expertise. And rarely do we have crossover, but from our conversation, I said she has to be on the Crown Herself show because we have to dive deeper into the spiritual side of what it takes to build a business, of what it takes to actually leverage all of your gifts into one cohesive business model. And that we don't have to have these like piecemeal, like, this is my business box and like stay closeted spiritually or closeted woo and really allow ourselves to bring our full selves to the table.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was a pivotal moment for me in my business when I stopped trying to hide that side of myself and I integrated that into my business. My business changed almost overnight. It was incredible.
Mhm. I think that's part of just the magic that comes when you step into your zone of genius. That is all the gifts that the creator, source, God, whatever you want to call it, endowed you with. And so today we're going to be doing something a little different. Susie is going to be channeling her intuitive gifts to just open up the oracle deck. And I was like, all right, I'm an open book. Let's open it up. So we're kind of flipping the table a little bit
Yeah,
on this. Yeah, let's
I
do
love
it.
that. I love that. So, yeah, let's do you have a question that you'd like to ask? You can ask it to the cards, God, universe, source. Do you have a question that you think that our listeners might want some information about?
Mm. How can I and our listeners better leverage visibility for generating revenue?
Love that. Okay, this is interesting. First card out is a 4. So the number 4 is about balance. I think of number 4 like, an animal that has 4 legs. The table has 4 legs. It's stable like a table. That's how I remember that 4 is the number of stability. And the card is higher power. And it's kind of hard to see it on the screen. But what's really interesting is the figure in this card really has, first of all, there's the oracles in the heart chakra area. So what it's saying is that you've got to follow your heart, but also there's a crown on this figure and there's a keyhole right in the third eye saying you've got to tap into that crown chakra. You've got to receive the messages that come in from your higher power, your higher self. The card's also pink. Pink is the color of the love vibration. So I would recommend to your listeners to get more pink into your workspace. Rose quartz is a great conductor of that love vibration. And when you do things from that space of love, you're actually going to be able to tap into your higher self and call in the abundance to create that stability and create the foundation that you need. Next card out is a 20 card. So 2 plus 0 equals 2. 2 is the number of the builder. Okay. So this is saying
Mm.
use that energy, that love vibration to create stability and build. And the card itself is the Imagine card. In this card, the person has a string that goes up to the moon. Okay. And it's also a new moon. New moons are about manifesting, calling in what you want. The card itself is the Imagine card. So it's saying dream big. Imagine the things that are what you think maybe not possible. It is possible when you really put yourself into it. The card is also blue. So blue is throat chakra. So that's saying when you have your dreams and your wishes and the things that you imagine, you think, oh, wouldn't it be great if I had this? And you write those in your journal, you write those in your goals. Speak that into existence. When you use your voice and you speak, you give that energy like tenfold power. So it's saying use the throat chakra, dream your goals and aspirations into existence. And then our last card here is a 52 card. So 5 plus 2 is the number 7. 7 is the number of the divine. It's God, source. It's also completion. So
Mm.
the card itself is mending. So this is saying, I love this. So there's two little girls on this card, and they are actually mending a banner. And these banners used to be used in medieval times, like between markets and fairs and things like that. And so what it's showing is that they're mending things that have happened in past lives can also mean your childhood, right? So
Mm.
it's saying, talk to your child within, the child within you, and say, what is the things that I want to imagine, I want to bring into this world? And how do I do that with love, right? But it's saying, talk to your inner child. And you'll notice that the thimble that she's sitting on is blue as well. So talk to your inner child, mend the old wounds from past life or your childhood. And I think when you do that, you're really going to find that by doing the healing work, it's going to help you have greater love for yourself and also help you manifest those things that you desire.
You manifest so much faster when you love yourself.
It's
A divine alignment. I remember healing myself from bulimia. Like when
Mhm.
I just shifted into the question of how do I actually want to feel? Like, how do I actually want to feel in my body? And I said, I want to feel good. Like, I want to feel like I love myself. I realized it had nothing to do with the number on a scale. It had nothing to do with what the size of my wardrobe was. It had to do with how I wanted to feel in my body. So a decade later, when I had to heal myself of money bulimia, which will be my book coming out in 2027, like that again, it came back to, well, what do I believe that X amount of dollars is going to allow me to feel? What do I believe that that's going to allow me to experience? And it all came back to doing the healing, to loving myself, and also learning to love the process. Like learning to love the process of exercise is just as much as learning to love the process of business, of building relationships, of building connections. And so many people overcomplicate business, but ultimately, like I was just talking with my 8-year-old about how to build an egg stand business because he was like, "We have extra eggs from our chickens." And we were just talking about it. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, we could do that. And we make like $24 in a day. And if we just sold the eggs for an hour." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not bad. And just being able to talk to kids about it and realize that most children are natural entrepreneurs and that we are just natural creators. We naturally understand these concepts are not that foreign, but we've been indoctrinated to not trust ourselves in our intuitive gifts and lead from that. And I think, and we've also been indoctrinated to think that pressure is something that needs to be avoided because, oh my God, let's reject hustle culture versus like, no, like labor requires a little bit of pressure. Like there's pressure in there to birth whatever it is that you want to come out of you. So when you think of like when you have experienced growth and expansion, how have you applied what the cards showed you?
And I want to just kind of rewind for just a quick second because you said something that was very interesting to me. When you talked about your eating issues and also your
Hmm.
money. Now, both of those things are rooted in self worth. So you had to go and deal with the self-worth of, I want to feel good in my body. And then you actually took and transmuted that into, I want to feel good about my money situation. Both of
Hmm.
those are worthiness issues. I think that's really interesting. And okay, so what was your question?
In a world full of, I think a lot, I know from my coaching practice, a lot of people mask worthiness issues in, oh, I don't just want to be another, you know, white woman screaming into the crowd. I don't want to be just another voice saying the same thing. And so we'll mask it in these belief systems, but really ultimately it's you decide that your voice is worthy of being heard and that you are worthy of being seen. How have you had to step into your power and your own worth?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that too, because my north node, if you've ever looked at your astrology chart, I encourage your listeners to go look at your north node, because that is the placement that talks about what your mission and purpose is in this lifetime. So my north node is in Aries. So that was really about me stepping into being seen, being heard, and not being afraid of it. And yet, here's what's funny. As a child, I was a performer. I was a dancer. I was in choir, band, all the things. I did every single musical, right? So, why was it that I was afraid to step into the spotlight and have a podcast and actually be seen and heard? And I even did a stint in my professional career in radio, okay, and I was a commercial actor. So, why was I afraid to share my spiritual gifts and the publishing work that I do? Why was I afraid of that? So, I had to kind of rewind and go back and look at those worthiness things. And I realized that there was a belief in my family that I had held on to for too long, not to get too big for your britches, right? And I think probably many of us heard that as kids growing up. So I had to go back to that and said, you know what? That's a bunch of BS that I got told that as a child. And I said, yeah, you know what? That doesn't even make sense, because in order for me to expand my business and expand my reach and share my gifts with the world, I have to step into the spotlight. I have to be able to be comfortable being on a podcast, and I have to be comfortable being seen and heard. So it's very interesting because, as a child, I was totally cool with that. But then once it came to my business, I was very afraid of that. And I had to go back and heal all that stuff. So, yeah, it changed my whole perspective.
I love that you brought up the child, and especially that that came up in the deck, because I think that's so poignant, because I too was going back in filming this show for Damon John's Next Level CEO. I was tasked with going back and going through my family home movies and getting some B-roll and all that. So I'm looking at all these videos of me as a child. And there was one that was just so amazing and audacious that I got it tattooed on my arm, because I saw this bold 6-year-old and like talk about a mirror for my 8-year-old son. Like I was like, holy, like the things that I'm like, can you please stop doing that? I'm like, oh my God, I was doing that at 6. Not only that, like I saw this bold, audacious version of me that was just stepping forth into her power. And I had this whole imaginary world, and I was running through this water forest, and my mom was like, "How are you going to get through it? How are you going to get through the water forest?" And I put my hands on my hips in my little pink tutu bathing suit, and I was like, "Simple. You just run through it." And I just ran off and like giggling and laughing and just did the damn thing. And I think that's so poignant with what your topic is, what your company is named, your podcast is named, is finish the damn book, do the damn thing. And how often do we, especially as more spiritual entrepreneurs, get trapped in the esoteric, like the thinking, the emotions, the shadow healing, without actually doing the damn thing that moves the needle in the physical realm?
Right. Yeah. I feel like there's so much coming out to the surface right now. And, we just kind of stepped into the age of Aquarius. And that really is about us taking a deeper look at, okay, what have we been told that was a lie? Right.
That's
Like,
a lot.
like find the absolute truth. It's a Queen of Swords kind of moment. It's saying, you know what? What did I falsely believe? What are the things that were imparted upon me from family, education, society, all those things? And it's time for us to rewrite that. And we have to go back to things like our childhood and the beliefs that we grew up with and say, you know what? I'm going to rewrite that story because that story no longer applies to me. So, whatever you're saying to yourself, in your head, in your dreams, all those things, rewrite that story and step into the spotlight, step into being powerful, step into sharing your authentic self because that is what people will be attracted to.
Have you made your inner child or like your 4, 5, 6-year-old self a part of your board for your business?
I haven't really consciously done that. No. And I think that's very interesting because I do have, and I learned this from one of my business coaches, that on Mondays, I do have what I call a coffee date with my business. And I really do spend the time like talking to my business as it is a separate entity and saying, hey, what do you need? But I haven't really thought about bringing that inner child into that and saying, okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to play with this, right? And the funny thing is when you said my inner child, I have a memory. There's a picture of me, and I remember this very well of me wearing, I think I was going to the first like friend birthday party ever. And I'm wearing this little yellow dress. It's adorable.
Love it.
And I just instantly, that is the image that popped into my head. So I need to go back and talk to my little Susie and say, hey, what does the business need? And what do we need to create? I think part of me launching the yoga studio was part of that too. That, the former dancer, the person who loves to do yoga, the spiritual woo woo side of me. And I said, it wasn't happening. So I said, well, I'm going to just do it, you know.
Yeah, I think that that's a tenacity and a trait that most successful entrepreneurs that I speak with have, myself included, to where it's like, "Oh, it's not there. I'm just gonna build the damn thing.
Yeah.
Like, let me do it myself. It's that thing that I wanted is not created." And there comes such power with the agency of saying, this circumstance or this reality is not what I want it to be. So I'm going to choose to make it exactly what I
Yes.
want it to be. When did you step into that, your power to be able to recognize yourself as a conscious co creator of your reality?
I don't think it was any one specific moment. I've had a lot of awakening periods during my life and really my spiritual gifts did not resurface until I was in my 40s. So like 2012 was a big one for me that there was like a big spiritual push in that time frame. Again in 2015, that was when I went through my divorce. And then I just have these time periods where things just become very clear for me. For example, when I had moved up to the mountains in California, 2024, and I just wasn't getting enough consistent yoga classes. And so I was like, this is frustrating for me. And so I kept thinking, well, what if I just did my own thing? And I pondered it. I, went to the Sedona Yoga Festival, did a bunch of research on being a studio owner and those kinds of things. But then I kept hearing the words in my head, "Build it and they will come," from, Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner, right? And so finally mentioned it to my Pilates instructor and she says, "You've got to see this space." So we went down, looked at it. I said, "Oh, this space is perfect." So got the lease done, everything was rolling, started having people get introduced to me that were instructors. And literally, once I had my core set of instructors, they all, in fact, it wasn't just them, it was even students that were coming to the studio, were saying, we have been praying for this. And I said, what? So, here they are in their imagine, and that's the builder card. They were in there like praying for this studio to open so that they would have a space for this in the community. And I said, oh, wait. So I heard your guys' prayers as Kevin Costner's voice in my head. I said, well, you've got to just listen to it, right? Is your higher self, what we talked about, your higher self coming through in forms that don't necessarily seem logical, but when you follow that inspiration, follow your intuition, then things kind of work themselves out. And it was actually extremely simple to get things ready and open the studio. So, and I look back to like my business, both my business and my podcast. kind of the same thing. When I just followed those nudges, things opened up and resources showed up and it made it pretty easy to do.
Where do you think we go wrong with overcomplicating it? Because I have had the same experience when tuned in and dialed into intuition and into a state of flow and receptivity. I've also had the force, the push, the I'm going to make it work, the hard way, which I don't recommend.
Right.
Maybe there were those intuitive nudges, but there was fear, there was doubt, there was shame, there was worthiness, there was questioning and all of that. And thus the process took like a lot longer to get dialed in. Where do you think we go awry and how can we get back on track faster?
Well, I think you have to go back to the root issue, which is fear, feelings of unworthiness. And you have to look at that and say, okay, if I'm getting this much resistance in the situation, why is that? What's happening? And then when you go back and you look at your own self, worthiness, fear, money a lot of times comes into play, right?
Mhm.
And you go back and say, okay, so why are those beliefs keeping me stuck? I need to change the beliefs, rewrite that story. And so I think that's what happens is people just they get up all in their heads and the fear creeps in, the unworthiness, the narrative that they were told as a child. And so when you can kind of go back and say, okay, let me just unravel this. Let me just do a deep dive. And things like meditation really helps. Working with a spiritual guide who might help you do like a past life regression is very helpful for me as well. All those kinds of tools, use them. Get yourself unstuck because it's your own fault if you're not succeeding. I mean, honestly, we have
Mhm.
to take responsibility for everything, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the unsexy conversation that people don't wanna have and kinda want to avoid, and ultimately, it is taking that radical responsibility for being a creator of your circumstances, and I also think that, like, because I look back at times in my life when I was out of alignment with the model where I was supposed to be, like, in my e-com company and growing that, and there were certain things, like, I didn't like, lessons of I wasn't standing up for what I was worth. I wasn't standing up for my boundaries. I wasn't advocating for myself. And in those areas, I learned some hard lessons very fast when I was going through the buyout process for that company. But I think that sometimes that comes from the universe saying, hey, you're not supposed to be on the path. Like this path is not the one you're supposed to be treading. So when you have, I mean, you've had several successions of pivots in your career. When did you learn to trust that internal voice saying, do the damn thing, launch the business, to trust it so that you could get those results a lot faster and a lot easier?
Yeah. I think I learned in stages for sure. But I think the moments that I saw the proof, and it's so bad because if you're trying to manifest, you cannot wait for the proof. You have to just literally trust it, believe it, own it, right? But when I saw the proof, then I was going back and going, yeah, if you would have just trusted this all along, it would have happened sooner. Like, like that's the self-talk, right? As soon as I saw the proof, as soon as I got into alignment with my spiritual gifts, and then I had literally banner months with my business, I was like, why didn't you do this sooner? Like, you just have to trust the process. Just have to trust it.
And when you look at the process, like that leaning in, it takes so much courage.
Mm.
It really does. Because I think the most amount of resistance is when you have not only the belief systems and all that, but then you have the projections of other people's opinions and other people then also saying, because especially nowadays with social media, there's like every person on the interwebs who's going to say, oh, you should do it this way or do it this way or do it this way versus really leaning into that internal knowing of, yes, there are skill sets that may need to be built, especially on the road to building a business, but what is the way that only you are like literally built to design and build something?
Well, it's funny too because you just mentioned courage, and I have these little printed rocks on my desk, and one of them is strength, another one's courage, another one is a reminder you are amazing. So I think sometimes we need to have those reminders, but even like when you're talking about other people's opinions, one of my favorite mantras is other people's opinion of me is none of my business. When you start to embody that, then you don't care about the naysayers. You don't care what people think. You're just like, I am in the zone. I'm doing what I'm here to do. So the rest of it just falls away when you stop paying attention to all of the distractions that go on and the naysayers and just do your own thing. Like bang your own drum, right?
Yeah.
Someone will hear it and go, "Hey, I like that. That's cool." Right?
Yeah, and I think being able to create in the way that you create, because I've had a lot of founders and leaders come to me and that from other people's programs where they're like, "Oh, well, I'm told that I'm supposed to build a list in this way." And I'm like, "Is that how you actually like building? Like, do you actually like doing that form of marketing? Oh, do you actually attend those summits? Do you listen to podcasts? If you're not a podcast listener, like, don't go on podcasts. It's probably not for you." Like
Exactly.
social media might be more your thing or in-person live events. Like there's a bajillion different ways that you can market and grow your business. When you had to look at what really works for you, what were the plagiarized programming as I call it, like the belief systems that you really had to strip away as you built your business?
Well, it's definitely, imposter syndrome for sure. Like, honestly, like, I literally had to go, "Yeah, people do care about what you have to say," because you do have a wealth of knowledge and information, and because I had this really eclectic career that finally landed in publishing, that, I was like, "Wow." My mom had said something years ago about I've had a lot of jobs, but took something from all those jobs that actually plays into what I do now because you learn those skill sets. And that's true for me too. So when I work with an author, I have a lot of business knowledge that comes from a varied background, which I can impart into that. So when I stopped, trying to not be seen, or I got rid of the imposter syndrome and said, "No, you are skilled. You do have knowledge and wisdom and all those things. That's what you bring to the table." So it was really about healing the imposter syndrome and realizing that, hey, it doesn't matter. Just
Yeah, I think that one of the greatest reframes for imposter syndrome was one of our podcast guests that we'd had on like a couple years ago. She's a dear friend. Her name is Jen Koken, and she wrote a book called Imposter Syndrome is Your Superpower. And she said, if you're not experiencing imposter syndrome, you're not playing in the right rooms because you're not choosing to go bigger. And
right,
I was like, oh, damn, I actually need to be like the reframe that I need to be experiencing imposter syndrome more. That was a game changer of like, of course, I'm not going to know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. And I'm
right.
going to surround myself and get in rooms with people who have done it so that, yes, I feel like an imposter, but I'm going to learn as fast as I can so I can stay in the room.
Exactly. And I do like that about, yeah, go ahead and look for where you feel triggered on the imposter syndrome, because then you're really like, yeah, but I'm bringing something different to the table. It's not about comparing, right? It's saying I have a unique perspective on things. So that really, to me, shuts down the imposter syndrome because I'm like, yeah, nobody does books like I do books. Like it's totally
Hmm.
different. Like my whole model is completely different. And yet it works, because the right people find me. So it's it's kind of fun to like play in that space too and be like, okay, I want to be on this podcast or I want to do a TED talk or whatever it is, because that's where the growth happens. We don't
Hmm.
grow if we're in a silo. If we're not challenged and scared and freaking out, you're not growing. So yeah, you're phoning it
How,
in.
how do you balance, especially because we have a lot of high achievers that listen to this podcast who are like growth junkies, myself included, probably why I attract that. Like, but what I've also noticed is sometimes when you're in such a state of growth, such a state of your capacity is being expanded, that it's almost too much for your nervous system at this point
Mm.
to withstand. How do you navigate that dance so you are expanding also at the rate that your physiological body can withstand it so that you're not like every lottery winner pretty much who like gets hit by the lightning of money and suddenly loses it within a couple years because they literally have not allowed their physical body to be able to withstand and have the masculine container to hold it.
Yes. Well, first of all, baby steps. I mean, don't try and do everything all at once. I actually coached one of my contractors on this once. I said she was not charging enough. And I said, you need to raise your prices. And she had such resistance to that because there was obviously a money wound that was not healed. And I said, you don't have to do it all today. I said, raise your prices this much and then go to the next level because you need to allow your body to integrate that and become comfortable with that level, then go to the next level. Then I
Mhm.
said, and just set, a little thing on your calendar that says, hey, every 6 months, I'm going to review my pricing, raise it $10, raise it $100. I don't care what it is, but you got to allow yourself to integrate that because again, you're rewriting that story. You're reintegrating that thought pattern, those beliefs in a way that's actually going to be helpful for you. So the other thing I would say too about that is you have to take care of the physical body, which is also your mind. So when you are integrating a lot in that growth pattern, you have to make sure that you're eating right, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, exercising every day. That exercise affects your brain, and that you are doing things like somatic yoga or restorative or taking walks in nature, staying grounded, taking salt baths, all those kinds of things is what helps you stay grounded and helps you with integrating all of that extra energy that you've got because you're in that growth stage. We are not that different than plants, right? We're not that different. When the plants get a lot of sunshine or a lot of rain, they take that and they integrate that and then they start their next growth pattern, right? They don't grow the next day after it rains. Well, they probably do a little bit, but it doesn't happen immediately. They integrate the water, integrate the sunshine, and they grow a little bit every day. So treat your body the same way because it's not gonna, you can't just flip a switch.
Yeah, I think so many people get caught up in the idea of like quantum leaping. And I'm like, I'm all for a quantum leap. And I've guided through many of my clients through a quantum leap. And that quantum leap was taken one day at a time.
Exactly. Yes. I've heard this saying, and I don't remember who said it, but it takes 5 years to be an overnight success, right? And it's the same thing, a quantum leap. It means that you are exponentially growing, but you still have to allow yourself to integrate that physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? Because you can't just be dumped on all at once. It's not going to work. You're not gonna know what to do with it, and just like you said with the people that become instant millionaires, they lose their money because they don't know how to manage their money or don't know how to
Hmm.
use the resources to manage that money.
So we have a nice mix of successful established business owners who listen to this podcast and newer business owners who listen to this podcast. I would love to touch on some of the spiritual beliefs around sales, especially for the newer business owners, and how those could also be applied later on once you're at that multi-million dollar phase.
Yeah. I think from a spiritual perspective, sales is not a bad word.
Thank
You
you.
need to have sales in order to make your business successful. So if you have a trigger around the word sales or marketing, those 2 definitely, then you need to go back and get to the root of that. Why is that scary for you? What is it that triggers you? And really, from looking at it from a spiritual perspective, consider your sales, it's just a conversation. If you want to just have a conversation with somebody, great. Have the systems and structures in place because having those boundaries, those guidelines, systems, and structures, that foundation helps you have the space to be creative. But yeah, when I'm doing a consultation, it's just a conversation. It's more about me asking questions and finding out really what they need because they might not need me. They might need somebody else. So when you can reframe it like that, it becomes less scary. And then you're also showing up in the energy of not being pushy, not being salesy, right? Because you're just having a conversation and it's a two-way conversation. You're trying to find out information about them, and they're trying to find out information about you. So it's almost like a dating app, right? Because
Mm.
that's what we're doing. We want to date those potential clients, customers, because we need to find out if they're a good fit for us. And if you take the perspective of not everybody's going to be a fit for me, I don't care how much you need that next paycheck in order to pay your electric bill. I get it, been there. If you approach it from, hey, I'm curious about who this person is because I want to see if they would be interesting and if I would like to work with them. Because
Mhm.
ultimately, as the business owner, you have the say in who you work with and who you don't. And when you can get out of that space of thinking like, I have to take every client because I need the money, that's lack, right? When you can get out of that space and say, hey, I'm curious about meeting this person, finding out what they need, because if it's not me, I'm going to find them the right person. It's a completely different energy.
Yeah, and I also agree that if you're in that space of, like, I need this client so that I can pay my electric bill, there's no shame in getting a bridge job. Like, go work at Starbucks, go bag some groceries, get some stability
Yeah.
so that you can build your business, because without that, if you are not able to make your offers with certainty, people are gonna feel it on the other side, and it's kinda
Oh,
like
yeah.
the guy at the bar who's, like, like, looking for the wife, and
It's,
you're like, "Oh my god, you reek of desperation."
yep.
It's not sexy, and so if you need to get Maslow's hierarchy and your foundation of financial stability at least squared away so that you have some money coming in so that you can pay some bills and, like, then do that
Yes.
and build with that.
Exactly. And have very stringent boundaries. I mean, I have stringent boundaries and because it helps me keep my sanity. And when I was building my business, I was working 5 jobs. I was waiting tables at a steakhouse. I was driving for Lyft. I had gigs on Fiverr. I was building my publishing business. And oh yeah, and I was doing commercials on the side. Like I was 5 jobs. And as my business grew and as things became more stable, I was able to let go of those one at a time. It was the baby steps, right? And then as I let go of that job, yeah, there's moments of fear because I knew I was in the growth period. And at the same time, I was freaking out. Can I pay for this and that? But I also was gaining confidence because I knew that hey, if I can let go of that part time job, that means I'm doing something right and I'm making progress. So you have to learn how to navigate the ebb and flow of the way business works and also integrate that with what you need as a person. And that's where I think the real spiritual side of the whole mix comes together.
Mhm. And I think as you grow and get closer to that that $1,000,000 level, what I've seen is the need shift. Like, when you get confident in building sales, but then, oh my god, now it's about building structure. Now it's about building systems that sustain, and then it comes to play our egos that are like, "But I don't want to I need to be needed by my business so that it knows that I'm still here." And that perception and need to then remove yourself and elevate your role into the visionary seat. So that you're constantly meeting yourself where you're at, whether you're just
Yeah.
getting started and you're learning to build that certainty and trust within yourself with generating sales and going through all the belief systems of like business has to be hard and business has to be a challenge. And, you got to spend money to make money, which is the most bullshit belief that I've ever heard. And I'm like, no, you got to make money to make money. Like spending money to never like it's an investing, but different story. I'm like, no." But then as you grow, it's building the systems and the structure and having team and support that comes in to play. Where have you found your ego most got tripped up in the journey of building your business?
I think it was me thinking that I had to do all the things myself. Like I had to wear all the hats. I had to be in charge. It was like, my gosh. And of course, too, I'm a recovering people pleaser. So you know how that goes. It's like I I just had to have my hands in all of it. And I have really healed that because, I don't really care. Like I mean, I care about the finances, but I don't care about the day to day. This is why I have people who do my taxes, who do my bookkeeping. I have a CFO who handles both my companies. And because I don't have the time. And quite frankly, those things would sometimes make me cry. And I would be like, nope, I'm not doing it because that's a low vibration. So I'm going to pay somebody to do that for me.
Yes.
I mean, you figure out what you like, what you enjoy. One of the things that I love doing is the consultations with people. I love meeting new people. I love hearing about their stories. I love being a problem solver for them. So when I do a consultation, I'm in that conversation. I can see the big picture and how does your book fit into this? And you know, like, what do you think of this? And, already coming up with ideas and things like that. I'm not worried about who's paying the bills or doing the bookkeeping. Really. I'm not worried about that. I'm focused on that person because that's where my best self comes out. And that's the thing that I enjoy doing. So that keeps the vibration high, which means I'm attracting more. So I'm not sitting there wallowing about, you know, how much money is in the bank or if the bills are paid or who's doing the bookkeeping or taxes. I don't know. I don't even look at that stuff. I'm aware.
Yeah.
Don't focus on it.
I think that comes into play is the awareness, because I know a lot of business owners who have avoided looking at their sales or avoided looking at their bank account, and that strategy, well, A, it's an attachment style, but B, you have to still be aware of your P&L. You have to
Oh,
be
yeah,
aware of
absolutely.
your profit. You have to be aware of what's in your bank balance. There's still a level of awareness. It's not just because you're not in that role doesn't mean that you're not aware of what's going on in that area.
It's very true, and I actually love looking at my sales because 'cause I'm like, I get very excited. I'm,
Yeah.
"Woo, look at how much better we did this month." I like, "Yay, yeah, yay for me." So for me, that's really actually a fun thing, but I'm looking at it from a very high level. I'm looking at the monthly reports, the quarterly reports, those kinds of things. I'm not looking at the day-to-day about, how much I spent on whatever, because the minutia is the stuff that makes me crazy. So I don't deal with minutia. I look at the big picture. I look at, okay, this is my sales for this month. I want to increase that by 15% next month. Like, how can
Mhm.
I do that? What do I need to do? Go back and look at a roster and say, who haven't I talked to in a while? Who do I need to catch up with? Who has a podcast that I should be on, right? So
Mhm.
it's a way to take the big picture and then break it down into small incremental things that you can actually move you forward versus going back and going, where can I cut expenses? That's not going to help you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Really.
and I also wanna bring attention to the question that you asked yourself, which I think is one of the most underutilized questions that most founders need to ask themselves, like, at least 20 times a day, is, "Who can I talk to?"
Yeah.
Versus, because so often there are so many bajillion shiny things that we can get obsessed with of like, well, maybe I need to go and redo my branding, or maybe I need to do my website, or maybe I need to create this new offer. And I'm like, probably you just need to talk to like three more people.
Right.
Week.
Right. And not go into the minutia of the administrative roles. I know that's where a lot of people's comfort area becomes. They feel comfortable doing that, but that's not getting moving your business forward. That's not getting you another sale. And you can break it down. This is why having the systems and structures is so important because you can go and look at and say, where did those sales come from last month? Who
Hmm.
is just like that person, or who does that person know? Reach out to the clients that love you and ask them, say, hey, I happen to have an opening for April. Who do you know that might be ready to start working on their book? Right? It's just a conversation. It's not scary. And 9 times out of 10, most of my business, I would say probably close to 90% of my business is referrals. I
Hmm.
don't do a ton of marketing. I don't do advertising. I focus on solid relationships.
What is your system for generating consistent, repeatable referrals? Because I know that most business owners who I have worked with, their number one way of getting business has been referrals. And yet, for some reason, most business owners don't have systems or processes in place that continuously and repeatedly demonstrate and generate referrals.
Yeah. So one way is obviously having great relationships with your clients and also letting them know, hey, if you ever have a question, I'm always here. When we close a project, I ask them, who do you know? And would you be interested in referring me to some of your people? And instead of them just sending my information, I ask them to make an email introduction so that now I have that person's information and I can follow up with them because, people don't always follow up. I also let everybody know I pay referral fees. And I
Hmm.
love nothing more than paying referral fees because that means I'm rewarding somebody for sending me business. And So when you have those types of things in place, it makes your life a whole lot easier because you know that so and so is going to send you a client, and because we're happy with their book project. Or I work with a lot of different editors, and they're always, hey, talk to Susie. I don't like the editors don't generally work on the production side, and so when they're done editing a book, who do they turn to? And a lot of authors don't know about setting up the accounts, about drafting a copyright page. There's all these other things that come into play. They need a little bit of guidance. So when you set up those systems and you let everybody know, hey, I pay referral fees, you ask your clients at the end, who do you know that might be able to use my services? Who can I help in your circle? So yeah, it's all about relationships.
It's all about relationships. And I think that that's one of the challenges that so many business owners face. And I know that when I first started my coaching business, I had my eye on the wrong ball. Like my eye was on the how and on the resource or lack thereof of money not being there to scale or put toward ads or to things like that. Versus really honestly looking at like, well, what resources do I have? And people are one of your best resources. They are referrals, they are connections. But just like any natural resource, we don't just want to be takers. We want to be in a symbiotic relationship where there is co-creation and growth. We don't want to just strip nature of its resources, and we don't want to strip our relationships of the resources because
Right.
people nobody likes to feel taken advantage of. How do you create symbiotic relationships that really allow for reciprocity?
Yeah. A lot of times it comes in the form of sharing their social media, supporting them on social media, making introductions for them. If they say they need X, Y, and Z, or they ask me, who do you know? Who needs a financial advisor? Great. I got 3 guys that just wrote books that are financial advisors. Let me make the introduction for you. So it is about that flow back and forth. And I think that again, this is all about creating that relationship where people are comfortable doing that, because I really want to have a solid network of people that I can go to, because who knows? It may be me that needs the resource down the road.
Mhm.
I might go, gosh, I need a resource. In fact, that actually happened on my podcast. I got a 2-week notice from my producer, and it was over the holidays. So I just said, okay, I'm just going to take a break because I didn't want to make a snap decision, and I just needed to process. I need to integrate, right? I needed to integrate this
Mm.
change. So I just let it sit and marinate. And then I actually talked to an author that I worked with that she does a great job on her podcast. And I said to her, have you ever considered being a producer for other people's podcasts? And I just got a 2-week notice and wanted to know if you would be interested in doing mine. And it was something that she had never even considered for her business, and she has a branding business. And she says, "Oh my gosh, I've never considered that." I said, "Well, if you're willing to do it, I need help." And so sure enough, it was a resource that I needed. So,
Yeah.
and I was so thrilled because I was unstuck for one, but the fact that by me asking that question completely changed the face of her business. She was able to expand and say, I now have another source of income. I've now expanded. So, and she was thrilled. She goes, this is so cool because I love doing this. And I said, well, great. Let's make sure that you're making money doing this because it's what you love. Right. So,
Yeah. I think that when did you move into leveraging and seeing relationships as a resource? At what stage in your business did you move from like the struggle bus into scaling and success?
struggle bus. That kills me. I would say it happened during the pandemic. I know, weirdly as that sounds, but those of us in this industry started getting an influx of people who were at home writing their book kind of
Yep.
thing. And it was really like the tide had turned. So that was a really pivotal time for a lot of us in this particular industry. But I think that I didn't fully integrate it right away, and that was probably a misstep on my part, right? I was still in that, in the thought process and the of still being imposter and still, a little bit in lack. And I think that once I started dealing with those issues, then it started to gradually kind of shift out of struggle bus, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, and again, it never happens overnight. Then when the next big shift for me was that was then when I brought in my spiritual gifts and the fact that I do readings and channeling and all of that. When I brought that into the business, that was just like the gods were applauding. And I was like, "Oh, okay, now I get it." Because now I was in alignment of being fully authentic, showing up, doing the work I do, and doing it in such a way that people were like, this is cool. This is different, right? I'm not like those online publishers that just it's plug and play and we're just going to publish your book in 90 days. And I'm like, yeah, that's so not good. So, yeah, it kind of, like I said, it came in a couple different stages, but it really kicked in. I would say next level was probably a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that 2020, 2021 was such an initiation for so many business owners, especially those who had been in the game for a while. It was either a pivot and get out, or it was like double, like dive deep and like build the system so you have the structure that supports you to sustain. And I could honestly keep on talking to you for days
I know.
because you and I could just go on so many spiritual tangents. I love the fact that you brought in astrology. If you're not familiar with astrology, then please go back and listen to Mara Kaufman's episode. She is one of my clients. She's an amazing astrologer. She will help you get familiar with astrology. And Susie, I would love to jump in to a little bit of rapid fire to wrap this in.
Okay, let's do it.
Who is your favorite character in a book or a movie and why?
Okay, so Vivian Lee in Gone with the Wind is one of my favorites just because she's such a spoiled brat.
She really is.
At the same time, you have to admire her gumption, you know? "I'll never go
Yeah.
hungry again." Like, there's a lot of different multifaceted things about her as that character, and I think that them casting Vivian Lee in that, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
She did such a great job in that role. And have you ever read the book?
I have not. Like, how bizarre is that, right? I mean, I work in publishing, but I've never actually read the book.
I read the book in high school. It's such a different story. Like it there were so many other parts of the story that they did not dive into in the movie. I like the movie, but I think she gets him back in the book.
So I definitely need to go read the book.
It's yeah, it's a fun one. What is your money routine?
My what?
Your money routine as a business owner?
My money routine.
Yes,
Um,
your money rituals, money routine.
well, first of all, whenever I have a sale or I have money coming in, I say I'm grateful. I said, "Oh, thank you so much." I was like, and I love on it.
Love on
I
it.
was like, "Thank you for showing up for me. I just love you. How are we going to utilize you?" Yeah. So that's kind of like one of my rituals is that I love on my money. Yeah.
Love that. And how like do you check balances on a weekly basis? How often do you meet with your CFO or your bookkeeper?
My bookkeeper just sends me updates. It's all done in the background, which is fine because I don't need to know all the little bits. But I actually keep a spreadsheet so I can like I have the spreadsheet is and I have all my businesses on one spreadsheet just so I know what bills need to be paid, like what has to happen. Like so I have a snapshot, but I don't need to necessarily know the minutia. And I usually just go in and check my bank balances a couple times a week. Um I also, I also have alerts set on everything. So if something came in
Mhm.
that I forgot about or wasn't aware, there's not a panic because I'm going to get an alert that, uh, you know, that's this came in and you're in low cash mode or whatever it might be. It might be.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I don't, I definitely, there's no panic. Absolutely no panic. That is not allowed.
Yeah, I love that. It's just trust.
It's trust and say, that's interesting, right? That's interesting. What are my options? When you approach things from that perspective, it makes it easier.
Absolutely. What do you define to be your queendom?
My queendom? Like my superpower? Or
Your it could be whatever you wanna interpret it to be.
I think my wackiness, like, honestly. Just like, yeah, just being weird and wacky and like,
And lastly, what does it mean to crown yourself?
I almost did wear a crown too, by the way, today. And I thought, well, okay, that might be a little bit too on the nose. To crown myself is really when I reward myself for a job well done. Like I take myself on a spa day, or a vacation, or something like that. That's really me crowning myself because it's part of the integration of, taking care of yourself, um, and also having something to look forward to. I love being able to look forward to something in the future. It's that thing that inspires me to keep going.
Love it. Susie, where can we find you? How can we finish our own damn books and get them out into the world?
Yeah. So you can find me at finishthebookpublishing.com is the website. Finish the Damn Book podcast is the podcast. You can also find it on Apple, Spotify, all the places, right? So yeah, I would just encourage people, if you want to continue the conversation or you need a little bit of help, reach out to me. It's just a conversation.
Amazing. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business because your reign is now.